joining us today. At this time, I'd like to recognize our honored guests, Mr. and Mrs. Lonnie Beatles. Would you please stand? Mr. Beatles has served in the Air Force during World War II and is one of the most decorated soldiers from the Hopkins County. Also, we have a little tidbit that tomorrow is their 57th anniversary. Thank you for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Mr. Stan Golightly, who is here today taping our broadcast for our program for broadcast on juice. And I'd like to also thank the Greenville Herald Banner for sending a representative today. At this time, I would like to recognize Miss Jennifer Kelly. She is, go ahead. Mrs. Kelly is a fabulous second grade teacher here at Lamar, and she is responsible for helping put all this together, this big program together for you today. So give her another big round of applause.
Good afternoon. I am so proud to stand here today before you to honor what I think are America's greatest heroes, our military men and women from the past and from the present and even to the future. You know, at the end of the American Revolutionary War, when America was trying to win its independence from England, there was a lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key. And I'm not even sure if some of you knew that he was a lawyer. I did not know that. But he was chosen to go and negotiate the freeing of some of the American soldiers from the British. And what they had decided to do was they were going to free one for one. An American soldier would be freed and then a British soldier. And they decided to do it that way. And they kind of called a truce. So he boarded a ship, or he boarded several ships where the American soldiers were actually being held. And he went down into the bottom of the ships, and what he found was something that he was not expecting to see. The American soldiers were pretty much chained up, and they were kind of being held hostage. And they were in a situation where things just didn't look very well. But Francis Scott Key came in and he said, "I'm here to tell you that tonight you will be free." And so he went back up on the deck and he met with the British admiral, and they were discussing the release of the soldiers. And the British admiral said to him, he said, "You know," he said, we're going to keep our word. We're still going to release an American soldier for every British soldier that you release. But we know how important your flag is to you, and we see it flying over on your land. And before we start releasing soldiers, we want you to take down your flag." And what they were actually trying to do was, instead of it being a truce, they were actually wanting us to give in and to give up. And what we were fighting for, boys and girls, was actually our freedom from England. And had we given up and taken down our flag, we would have never probably been free from that country. So the admiral told Francis Scott Key, he said, "Look out over on the horizon." And they looked out over on the ocean, and all he could see were a lot of little dots in the background. He said, "What is that?" And the admiral told him, he said, "That is the entire British Army. And they are waiting just to fire on your fort." And it was Fort Henry, I believe. And Francis Scott Key said, "You can't do that." He said, "That's not a normal fort. That is a fort that houses mostly women and children. You can't do that." And the British admiral said, "Yes, we can, and we will, unless you take down your flag." Well, Francis Scott Key went down into the ship again, and he met with the American soldiers, and he told them what was happening. And they said, "Absolutely not. We will not take down our flag. We will not give in. We are going to have our freedom from England. So what happened was the British soldiers started firing upon the fort, and as they were doing it, some of the bombs would come through and actually hit the American flag. And as you know, when that happens, it would make holes in it. It was starting to shred it. And occasionally it would actually hit the pole. So the pole started to bend a little bit. And Francis Scott Key kept coming down to report to the American soldiers, and he said, they were telling him, don't give up. Don't give up and don't give in. So as the American flag was starting to droop and to fall, and we all know that we do not want the American flag to touch the ground, there were other American soldiers that actually came and stood in, and they stood underneath the flag, and they held it up. And as the British soldiers kept firing on the flag and firing on the Fort Henry, the flag came closer and closer to the ground. And as they were firing, they hit some of our soldiers. And as some of our soldiers were hit, others would come and step in. They refused to give in. And that's kind of how I feel about our soldiers now, all the way up through now. They're standing in. They are protecting our freedom from many, many years ago. Now, it was the 11th hour of the 11th day in the 11th month that a treaty was actually signed to end World War I. And that was actually the beginning of Veterans Day. And every November the 11th, we stop to honor our veterans. But there are 364 other days in the year that we need to actually stop and remember them. And today is one of those days that we're going to remember America's greatest heroes. So if you would you please welcome our second grade class as they present to you their program, America, Our Greatest Heroes.
When Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, he called America the land of the free and the home of the brave. Those words are as true today as they were then. Please stand and join us for our Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing for our national anthem. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We nation is grateful to veterans, the brave men and women who have served in our military. Our veterans have made tremendous sacrifices to protect our freedom. The title veteran must be earned. It is a title that speaks of courage and sacrifice. It is a title that speaks of compassion and heartbreak in the wake of the terrible cost of war. And it is a title that speaks of love for our country and the belief in America's goodness and strength. Those who have served our nation in uniform are the best people our society has to offer. We owe them a full support and our most sincere thanks. They soar in jets above the land and sail beyond the seas. They march to the desert and crawl between the trees. No matter what the role they play, each chooses to protect the lives of all Americans. For this we owe a debt. Please say a little prayer with me for the troops, air, sea, and ground.
Grant them courage when times seem bleak. Grant them strength when they feel weak.
Grant them comfort when they feel alone, and most of all, please bring them home.
These words are inscribed on the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. Our nation honors her sons and daughters who answered a call to defend a country they never knew and people they never met. Those words also ring true for the many others who have served in countless wars. They apply to the military men and women serving today.
Today it is our privilege to thank all of America's veterans. Just to let them know that we appreciate their service and honor them for their sacrifices.
The price of freedom is high. We cannot afford to quit those willing to pay it. Throughout this nation's history, America's soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard men have bravely answered the call to defend our freedom. We can never fully repay our debt of gratitude to the many service members who died in battle or who were wounded.
However, we can recognize and thank the millions of veterans still living today.
Today we celebrate America's veterans for keeping this nation the land of the free and the home of the brave. What is a hero? A hero is a person noted for feats of courage and nobility of purpose. A hero is a person who has risked or sacrificed his or her life for the sake of others. A hero is a United States veteran. And today we say to you, thank you for your service to your country.
You know, it was about a year ago today that I stood before you at a program just like this, and I was the proud mom of a U.S. soldier who was, at that time, 1 month and 3 weeks and 3 days into her deployment into Iraq. And today, as I stand before you, I'm the proud mom of a U.S. soldier who is 14 months, 3 weeks into her deployment into Iraq. And in 1 more week, she comes home. Coming from a veteran, so I'm actually reading this to all of you on behalf of them. I was a proud veteran that served my country well. To those that would listen, I had many stories to tell. We fought for America's freedom in faraway places on foreign land. Wherever the battle for democracy raged, America's finest made a stand. We fought for your future and the right to remain free. for we saw what freedom meant to those not blessed with liberty. For you and yours, we would gladly have given our life. We faced the fears and perils of battle. We braved endless turmoil and strife. Please remember us veterans and the sacrifices we made for you. Please share the blessings of freedom. Proudly wave the red, white, and blue. Again, let's thank our veterans one more time. I want to thank you for being such a wonderful audience. This is so important to us to remember. Sunday is actually Veterans Day, and I want you to stop for just a moment on that day and think about some of the things that you're doing on that day, and think about how you have the freedom to do them. Now, if you don't mind, would you thank my second grade students, our whole second grade class, for a wonderful job. To our men and women in uniform, past, present, and future, God bless you and thank you.